So happy to see you this evening. My name is Stephanie Plunkett, and I'm Deputy Director and Chief Curator, and we are so pleased you came out for this wonderful talk by Liza Donnelly. This is actually the beginning, really, of our series of programs, Thursday evening programs, relating to our current exhibition, Chast Cartoon Memoirs. So we are so honored that Liza has been able to come and join us tonight. I'd like to tell you a little bit about her. She's a remarkable artist, as many of you probably know. She is a contract cartoonist and writer for The New Yorker, which has featured her cartoons about culture and politics for over 30 years. A columnist and cartoonist for Forbes.com, specializing in politics and women's rights, Liza is also a featured weekly political cartoonist for Medium. Her writing and cartoons have also appeared in many other publications, including Politico, Huffington Post, Daily Beast, The Washington Post, and Salon. She's been profiled globally in numerous publications, and her work has been exhibited around the world. In fact, she just told me she's going to be exhibiting in France pretty soon. In 2014, Liza received an honorary doctorate from the University of Connecticut, where she delivered the commencement address that year. In addition to her career as an artist, Liza is a cultural envoy for the United States State Department, traveling around the world to address issues relating to freedom of speech, cartoons, and women's rights. The presenter of a TED Talk, Liza has also spoken at the United Nations, the New Yorker Festival, Thurber House, Vassar College, Bard College, Brown University, the Omega Institute, the Society of Illustrators, and of course here at the Norman Rockwell Museum, so we're happy to welcome her back. Liza is also the author and editor of 15 books, including her most recent, Women on Men, a collection of her cartoons and writing, which was lauded as a finalist for the Thurber Prize in 2014. Before that, she published many other books: When Do They Serve the Wine?, The Folly, Flexibility, and Fun of Being a Woman, Funny Ladies, the New Yorker's Greatest Women Cartoonists and Their Cartoons, Sex and Sensibility, 10 Women Examine the Lunacy of Modern Love, and Cartoon Marriage, Adventures in Love and Matrimony with the New Yorker's Cartooning Couple, which she created with her husband, Michael Maslin. Liza is also a very good friend of Chast, and I know that we really look forward to her insights about her own work in the world of cartooning. Thank you so much, Liza. Thank you for coming.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. It's great to be back, Stephanie. Thank you so much for that nice introduction, and thank you to Laura Norton Moffat, the director, for having me here. It's my honor. I really love being here, and I appreciate the invitation. So I'm going to show you some of my work, but I'm also going to talk a little bit about some other cartoonists that I know. I work for The New Yorker, as Stephanie said, and I met Roz Chast about the time that we both were selling to the magazine. She was in 1978, she started selling there, and I started in 1979, and we both were single gals on the Upper West Side. So we got to know each other in those early days, and we have gone through a lot together, through marriages and births and parents. Her book is remarkable. I just don't know how she did it, but she did it. She did a beautiful job. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what it's like to be a New Yorker cartoonist. And when Roz and I started at the magazine, we were two of three cartoonists at the magazine who were women. So there were only 3 of us out of 50, 60 men, which I didn't think about at the time. It didn't occur to me that really that meant much, except that there weren't many women. But now I know that The New Yorker actually had women at the magazine from the beginning. And I wanted to show you some of these women quickly before we get into my work. In 1925, the magazine was founded by Harold Ross and his wife, Jane Grant. They were both journalists. And they started The New Yorker, and they wanted to get the best talent at the time in New York City. And there were women coming to New York City to start careers as artists, and they got some of these women to contribute to the magazine. And these are a few of them: Alice Harvey, Mary Petty. You may know some of these names. Mary Petty was very famous. Helen Hokinson, also very famous, and Barbara Sherman. And they worked, not all of them started in 1925, but a few, I think Helen Hokinson and Barbara Sherman started in 1925, and they also did covers as well. And there were a few other women, too. So there were about 8 women that started in those early days at the New Yorker. But these were the most prolific women. And this is one of Helen Hokinson's drawings. It's not really a cartoon per se, because there's no caption, but it's a humorous drawing, because her drawings were just beautifully drawn, but they were also funny in the way they were drawn. Most of these women were classically trained. They went to art school. And the New Yorker was creating the New Yorker cartoon as it went along. You know, the New Yorker cartoon, most cartoons before the New Yorker was founded were drawings, but they had like 3 or 4 captions underneath, you know, like a dialogue, like a joke underneath the drawing. But Harold Ross and his editors helped the artist to come up with New Yorker cartoons as we now know it. This is Alice Harvey, and the woman saying to the other woman, "Oh, she's very attractive. I don't like her at all." So these women drew about all kinds of things, but they did depict what it was like to be a woman in the 20s and 30s. This is Mary Petty. And I don't know if you can see it, she's wearing this very fancy hat, and she says, "I don't even try to understand them anymore." This is Barbara Sherman. Yes, Jane was stunning, but she's married now. So that's just an example, and I wasn't going to go into the whole history of the women cartoonists. I wrote a book about it, and I'll show you the cover later. But I just wanted to show you that Roz and I were, and the third, I really should say, the third person that was a cartoonist at the magazine who was a woman was Nurit Karlan, who's still alive, and she lives in Israel. She's from Israel, and she lives over there. She's retired now, but I saw her when I was over there. And I remember looking at Nurit's work when I was starting out. I looked at the magazine when I was a kid, and I saw Nurit's work, and I thought, maybe I can do this, because her work is very simple. I didn't know she was a woman, but it was something that attracted me to her work, was the simplicity of it. So about me a little bit, I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and my mother, my parents had the New Yorker around, but they really loved James Thurber. And so my mother gave me a book of his cartoons one day. I was homesick from school, and I started tracing his drawings and loved it, because I don't know if you know his work. It's very simple. It's very much different than Norman Rockwell's, but it's very, very simple, almost childlike. And it really attracted me, and I just started tracing. And I was hooked. It made my mother laugh, so I was hooked. And I began creating my own style over time. This is one of my early cartoons. I just draw the people around me that I saw. And I don't know if you know Thurber, I can kind of see the Thurber influence there in the drawing. I didn't understand Thurber's cartoons. They were very strange. I didn't care about the captions. I just liked the drawing. The PTA meeting. So I was launched as a cartoonist. I was also very, very shy, so it was my way of being just in the corner with my paper and my pad and drawing and observing the world, and not having to talk to anybody. It was great. I think a lot of cartoonists are like that. They're sort of, Roz, I think she said things like that. She's a bit of we feel like a misfit. We're outsiders watching you guys. So, we're going to jump forward a little bit. I went to college, liberal arts college. I studied art at the liberal arts college, but I studied a lot of other stuff, which I think is helpful for a cartoonist to know a little bit about a lot of things. And I moved to New York and started working at the Natural History Museum as a job, which was great, American Museum of Natural History, and I started submitting cartoons to the New Yorker. Let me just show you where I work now. This is my studio. It's an old barn. I live about an hour from here in Rhinebeck. It's really beautiful. And this is my studio. I don't know if you can see it. It looks kind of fuzzy up here, but the desk and all my books. But that's where I work now. But when I was first starting out, I was living in New York City, as I told you, and I started submitting to the New Yorker every week. And this is the hallway where you dropped your stuff off. This is very dark, very dingy. There's a window there, a woman behind a glass, and there's a little slit where you put your envelope of your wonderful, amazing drawings in the window for the woman, and then you go home. And you just pray and you hope and Lee Lorenz was the art director at the time, and he would look at your cartoons, and eventually, after 2 years of doing this, I sold my first cartoon. And I couldn't believe it. And like Roz, I was watching the video today of her starting out too, which I know the story, and I know her first cartoon, which I love, but mine was also very strange. It's what it is. And see, I had to explain it to everybody, which was embarrassing. It's Cézanne's three elements in nature. Cézanne had a theory that there are three elements in nature that artists need to know: the cone, the sphere, and the cylinder. And I just took that given and I added a television set to it, and that's the joke. So it was. But I was so thrilled. I felt like I'd just gotten the lottery. And this is the second one they bought and the first one they ran. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a man walking down the street, and he stops and thinks, maybe I don't pet dogs enough. And then he turns around, and he pets the dog, and then he walks on. In the late 70s, the New Yorker did print a lot of sequential cartoons and a lot of captionless cartoons, more than they do now. And that's sort of where I fit in. I was suspicious of words. I didn't like to do captioned cartoons. I like to do uncaptioned cartoons, but they're very difficult to do. And it's better to make friends with words so you can do cartoons that have captions, which I learned to do over time. I started doing more and more cartoons like this. I feel like fooling around with Radicchio. So I would do, this was in the 80s, and I don't know if any of you knew this, but in the 80s, there was a lot of food stuff going on in New York City, a lot of restaurants, people were talking about food, and Radicchio was a new thing in the 80s. It's like kale is now, Radicchio. So that's what cartoonists often do. We're like listening for those words that are in the culture, and we can use them, put them in a cartoon and use them, and I do that a lot, finding words. I'm off to my risotto class. Again, risotto was big at that time. Now it's, ho-hum, we all know about risotto, but back then it was a new thing. Who ordered the special prosecutor? This is like an easy cartoonist joke in a way, because you just take a word and you draw it into a cliche. And this was during the Clinton era, when Clinton was getting prosecuted to death. Remember that? So again, I just found a word. I love doing political cartoons. When I was growing up, I wanted to be a political cartoonist, but I thought, well, I don't have enough opinions to be one, which turns out not to be true. But in my early 20s, I didn't think I did. And so the New Yorker actually runs, as you probably know, they run political cartoons in their own way. They're very quiet and subtle. And so I did sell, and I have sold a number of political cartoons for them. So it was a great solution for me. It was a way to be political in a quiet manner. I'm sorry, Sue, but Will can't come out. He has to stay in and finish his screenplay. This is notable because this is during the Tina Brown era, when they started using color cartoons. They stopped doing that now, only rarely do they, but the magazine was founded as a black and white magazine, and actually Harold Ross, the founder, said at one point, I hope I get this right, he said, what's so funny about red? So it's like color is not necessary for the idea, usually. Sometimes it is. In this case, it's not. But Tina Brown wanted to have color cartoons, so we had color cartoons for a while. I do a lot of kid cartoons. I'm staying together for the sake of my parents. Another one of my influences growing up was Charles Schulz. So I think I do a lot of cartoons, kids talking in the sandbox or kids talking on a swing, saying something that's that an adult might say, or a kid commenting on the absurdity of life, things that we take for granted. I don't see liking trucks as a boy thing. I see it as a liking trucks thing. Of course he would say that. He's talking now, but only through his attorney. I actually don't do that many attorney jokes. My husband does a lot, but attorneys are, I hear other cartoonists say attorneys are really great material. Any lawyers out there? Probably a few, yeah. And then there's a kind of cartoon that you don't really know where it came from, and you don't know how you came up with the idea. Some of these, you really don't know where the ideas come from. They, you work with the words, you doodle, you just sit there and daydream. You have a paper, and there's stuff all over the paper, and all of a sudden it comes together. If I knew how it really worked, it would be much easier. But you just sort of have to be patient with yourself and kind of listen to yourself think. This next one, cat, anyone? I don't know where this came from. It just happened. And also you don't know whether they're going to buy either. You have to give them. I submit about 6 to 8 cartoons a week, and you give them things that you think are the best cartoons in the world, and then you give them things you have no idea what it means or whether it's funny or not. And that's the one they'll buy. So there's no predicting. It's like the caption contest. You really don't know. And actually, the back page where they have the contest, we don't work like that. Most of us, I don't think. We don't have a drawing and then put the caption on it. It's much more mysterious. Ice cubes down your back. I've done a lot of these kind of cartoons, soubrettes, and this is like cartoonists have, what do you call it, meme, sort of something that you return to a lot. For me, it's sandboxes and soubrette stands, and you can just put something on there, and it can refer to the weather, or it can refer to politics. It's a great way to, it's like a psychiatrist's couch, too. I have one of those in here I can show you. I'd invite you in, but my life's a mess. This is like a twist on a. That's what cartoonists do also, is you take something that's a given and you make it different. Like my first cartoon. I'd invite you in, but my room's a mess, and my apartment's a mess. Her life's a mess. So it's kind of an easy. And then sometimes you get to do cartoons that are really fun to draw. Okay, everybody, let's eat before the food gets dirty. Another one of my favorite cartoonists is Sampé. I like the way he draws. Now the next cartoon was a pivotal moment for me in my career, and I'll tell you why. Daddy, can I stop being worried now? It's not very funny, but I did it after 9/11. After 9/11, I had a lot of trouble drawing cartoons. I didn't think I wanted to do it anymore. I thought, I'll just go teach or something. I just couldn't figure out how to be a cartoonist. And I drew this, and the New Yorker bought it and ran it like a month or two after 9/11. And it just got me back into doing it. I felt great because I contributed something, however small. And this is how the country, do you remember? This is how the country was feeling. Like, are we going to have to think about this all the time now? Turns out we are. But I also felt like at this point, I decided to be more political, to really try to get at what was bothering me about the world, about our culture, whatever. I was going to focus more on that as best I could. So I did more political cartoons after that. And the New Yorker ran some of them. I didn't protest this war, but I'll try to protest the next one. This is during the Iraq War. And I'll get back to the political cartoons in a minute. I'll show you some of the other stuff. But the New Yorker would run things like this, sort of slightly political, subtle cartoons. The other thing I started doing around this time was doing more cartoons with women speaking and making snide remarks. Some wine with your vest, she says. This is Roz Chast's favorite cartoon of mine, by the way. She told me that. And I did this during Tina Brown, and Tina Brown bought more and more cartoons like this of mine. It would take more than your pleats to drive us apart, but not much more. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was making women talk and being funny in my cartoons from time to time. Some kids at school called you a feminist, Mom, but I punched them out. This was done during that same time period in the 90s, when feminism was still a dirty word. It's still kind of a dirty word with some people, but this little girl's embodying it. You don't have to go to this party. It's men optional. I think I'd look better without you. So trying to make women be funny. I don't know if she's actually making a joke there or not. And then I do like to make fun of women. I don't make fun of just men. I like to make fun of women too, because we're part of the problem. It won't work if I tell you what I want, because if I tell you what I won't want it anymore. And this is in the New Yorker. I mean, it's remarkable that she's not wearing anything, and this is in the New Yorker, because when I started out in the late 70s, this would have never been in the magazine. The topic, let alone them both being naked. William Shawn was the first editor that I worked with, and he was very much of a prude, I think, from what I hear. I never date. I'm too niche. It's a Starbucks, right? So this is another case of using a word that I found in the culture and just plugged it into a cartoon. I think it was being used in politics. So you're a Democrat and you've won. How does that make you feel? This is when Obama won the first time. It had been a long, dry spell. I wanted to show you this also because one thing that I try to do in my cartoons now, whenever I can, is make the speaker a woman, because why not? Women can be every man now. And it's a subtle thing to make the woman a speaker. So I made the therapist a woman and the patient a woman. And they're not talking about women's issues, they're just talking, they're just people. Back in the 60s, if you did this cartoon, it would be kind of strange. People say, well, why is the woman a therapist? Does that mean something? Or, you know, it would just be a different cartoon. Now it's much more common, but I still try to do it as often as possible. And this next cartoon is one I did so fairly recently. I sometimes do caveman drawings, and this is one of my favorites. Still not funny. Try jamming yourselves all together into the car. And it's a woman talking. She's the one that's making the decision about what's funny, and that's why I like that. So those are some of my New Yorker cartoons that I've done over the years, a sampling of them. And as a cartoonist, many of us, as you probably know, we have to do other things too. We actually cannot make a living just with New Yorker, unfortunately. It helps having the New Yorker name with your work because it gets you jobs and stuff. So we do a lot of other types of jobs. I do illustration, I do books, and I do public speaking, and I've taught. And one thing that I've started doing, which I really am enjoying, and I sort of fell into it, is I'm doing this live tweet drawing. I love Twitter. And what I do is I have an iPad, and I have an app on the iPad where I quickly sketch what I'm seeing on the television. And I do this for political events or the Oscars or the Emmys or the Tonys, and I tweet them out immediately, and it's like a visual tweet, and people seem to love it. I'm just going to show you a few of those. Was it the Golden Globes, I think, where Amy Poehler and Tina Fey were hosting, and NBC, I think, tweeted it out. New York Cartoonist is live tweeting the Golden Globes, so that was really exciting to have that happen. So this is the kind of thing I'll do. It's so quick. I do it within a minute, usually. And they're not great caricatures, but they're likenesses, and they're sort of a response. They're very colorful. This is Viola Davis. You know, the Oscars are always fun to do because these dresses are wild. I can't even do justice on some of these dresses. And Alan Cumming one year was dancing, doing his role in, what was the name of that? Yeah, Cabaret. And then I also did the Olympics once for the New Yorker. So the New Yorker hired me to live draw the Olympics. That was a lot of fun. And then recently I was asked, I'm starting to do actual live events, going to the event, not just doing it for my television, and drawing the conferences, drawing who I see and what's going on. And I was invited to go to Iceland to live tweet a conference it was a women's rights conference about closing the gender gap. And I was there, and I live drew it. I also drew parts of Iceland. Have any of you been to Iceland? It's a beautiful country. Very, very, Is it expensive? Yeah, I didn't have to pay for anything. But it's quite beautiful. And Gina Davis was there. She spoke, talked about her foundation for women, her Institute for Women. And then the other thing I've been doing lately, I like to use the new tools in our culture to see what I can do with them and my skills. And I just play with things. So I noticed that the Norman Rockwell Museum had a cartoon of mine up on their website to announce this talk, and it was had to do with one of the hurricanes that we had recently that flooded New York City. What was the name of that hurricane? Is that Sandy? And that drawing actually was done as a live drawing. I did it and taped myself drawing it, and this is, let's see, can we do it? So I think I was holding the iPhone over my hand. And then I share this on social media, and people seem to enjoy it. And what I've discovered is, for me in social media, is it's just like an extension of my childhood in terms of, I like drawing cartoons to make people happy. And so when I do these kind of things and put them on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, people are having a good time, and it makes me happy. So. As you can see, I use a crow quill pen, dip it in ink. And usually I don't draw straight like this, although it certainly is a nice way to draw because it makes the line much looser and more animated. Many times when I do my finished drawings for the New Yorker, I use a light box where you have a sketch and you put the sketch down on the light box and the light shines through, and then you put good paper on the light box, on the sketch, and you can sort of trace it. That's how I normally work. But if I can do something that's just simple and free-handed like this, it's better. Do you know the illustrator, cartoonist Ed Sorel? He's a really wonderful artist. And he's a friend of mine now. I grew up wanting to be Ed Sorel, but now he's a friend, and he used to tease me and say, "You've got to get rid of that light box. You just got to draw straight on the paper." Because it's almost like a direct connection between the artist's mind and her hand. And then also I've been doing, thank you. It's fun. And there's other tools, other programs, apps, I'm not sure what to call them, that you can use. And Snapchat is something that's new to me. And the New Yorkers, a lot of magazines are using Snapchat now. I'm not even quite clear how it works, but the New Yorker's using them, and I became friends with a filmmaker there at New Yorker, a young woman, and she's been doing these Snapchats with me. I don't know if there's any audio, but I'll show you this one. For a few minutes. No, sorry, 24 hours. It's live on the phone or whatever. There's less time in this, so they have to make it short. I mean, they have to cut it up like that. Stop action. So this goes out on the New Yorker's Snapchat account and stays live for 24 hours, and then it goes away. But she gave me the file to use for talks like this. So. Oh, then they go on and talk about the covers. The cover editor does her thing on Snapchat too, so it's fun. It's interesting. So as I mentioned, some other things that I do are books. Oops. This is the book I told you about, Funny Ladies, which is a history of the women cartoonists at the New Yorker from 1925 to 2000. And it was really fun to do. I spent a year researching in the archives. The New Yorker archives are down at the New York Public Library. And just sat there getting boxes of material and reading letters between editors and cartoonists and tracking women down. One of the women I showed you earlier, Barbara Sherman, was really hard to find any information about. It was quite a lot of fun, and I loved it. And then I wanted to do something that was a little more mainstream, perhaps. The other book was a history, actually written. I wrote it. This was a collection of cartoons by 10 women, 8 of whom are New Yorker cartoonists, and 2 were political cartoonists. And I asked them if I could have cartoons about love and sex, and I asked them to write essays too, so there's some essays in this book. This book is out of print, unfortunately. And this was a lot of fun to do, collaborating with my colleagues. There are now about 8 or so women cartoonists. Just like in the 1920s, there were about 8 women cartoonists. And then, just as an interesting aside, when I did my research about the women at the magazine, they kind of dwindled out in the 50s and 60s. There were no women cartoonists in the middle of the decade. And then they resurfaced in 1970s when Lee Lorenz became the art editor. Not that he was looking for women cartoonists. I interviewed him for the book. He wasn't looking for women cartoonists. He was just looking for a new way to express humor, different way and he looked and he found Roz Chast, which she was very different at the time, Nerrit Carlin, myself. And then a series of other women came in the 80s too. Victoria Roberts. So this is a collection of them. The 2 political cartoonists in this book, Signe Wilkinson and Ann Telnis, are really the only 2 mainstream political cartoonists who are women in the country for newspapers. Ann works for the Washington Post and Signe works for the Philadelphia Daily News. There are some women online now who are drawing cartoons, but basically that's it. It's still very unbalanced in that regard. And then I did this book with my husband, Michael Maslin, which is a lot of fun to do. He and I met because of the New Yorker. This is a collection of cartoons of his cartoons and mine, just about marriage. And then each chapter has a graphic narrative that we drew together, which was fun and challenging. We're still married. So. And then When Do They Serve the Wine? I wanted to do a book that was a collection of my cartoons that spoke to the different generations. I was teaching at the time. I taught at Vassar for a while. And I realized that women of different generations weren't talking to each other that much. You know, I'm 60 now, and my freshmen, I mean, if we could only talk to each other, we might be able to solve some problems. If they could hear me tell them, if they'd listen to me, or if I listened to them, we might be able to get some change happening. And I think that's happening now, actually, with social media making that bridge. But I wanted to do a funny book about the different things we go through as women that we do to ourselves and that the culture does to us from birth to 60. And this is the first cartoon in the book, where it all begins. You know, we're made a gender as soon as we're born. And the culture perpetuates that. And then we buy into it. And then we buy into things like this. Honey, does this make me look fat? So the book has some commentary on women, but it also has commentary on what's going on in the world. What we wish construction workers would really say. You look really intelligent. You chose some great color combinations. You look like an important person. They're going to promote you today. You don't look old. We're idiots and apologize for man's insensitivity to women. And then the last book I did was Women on Men, which is a book about women making fun of men lovingly. So I wanted to, at the time I did this book, I was thinking a lot about how women don't use humor. You know, we typically have not been the ones that create humor in this culture. That's changing now. It's great. It's a lot of women are being comedians and coming out and being cartoonists and comedians and comic actors. So it's changing, but at the time it seemed we don't use humor enough. And part of the reason is that humor is can be an aggressive art form. It can be something that controls people and dominates people. So I think, in a nutshell, I write about this a lot in the book. And they're cartoons women making fun of men, like this one. Now act like you like it. And some of the cartoons in the book are a little more serious than this one, but and the thing is about cartoons that I'm calling my cartoons political, and I do more political cartoons, as you'll see in a minute, but even people communicating with each other can be a political act. You know, particularly for women, we have to negotiate so much on a daily basis, as do men, but cartoons can get at those relationships. These kind of cartoon can get at those relationships. And I used to use these kind of cartoons in my class, my women's studies class. And the students would go like, oh yeah, that happened to me the other day. My boyfriend said that to me. And so it gets at stuff that's going on the ground floor, you know, between people. I've asked you all here today for your Y chromosomes. Hey you, let's reduce the gender gap. So that's, and now I want to show you some cartoons that begin to get a little more serious, some of the things I've been pushing myself to do. This one, Mommy, what did you do in the war on women? So that was a phrase that was being bantered around about 2 years ago, I think. And this kind of cartoon, the New Yorker didn't buy, but I'll publish it on Medium, or for a while I was working for Women's E-News, outlets like that. I can't decide what I want to be when I grow up, a good girl or a slut. Woman runs company while pregnant. Woman leads board meeting while menstruating. Woman overcomes PMS to win Nobel Prize. This idea came because about a year or two ago, Marissa Mayer was hired, now I'm going to get it wrong, to become the CEO of Yahoo or Google, one or the other, I forget. But she was hired to be a CEO of a major company, and it became clear to the media that she was pregnant. And there was a flurry of articles about how can she do this? Can she do this? Can she be pregnant and be a CEO of a major company? And it was based on real life, this cartoon. In one day, I went from tweeting about my oatmeal to tweeting a revolution. This one I did during the Egyptian spring, when Twitter was just sort of starting out and the Americans were getting into Twitter and the revolution was happening, and just commenting on this white woman's use of Twitter. And then this next cartoon is a little more serious, and I started doing these for mediums on a weekly basis. Am I going to get raped? Checklist. This is what women have to think about. Shirt too opaque, shirt opaque enough, hair too provocative, heels too high, too much skin, did I drink too much, skirt too short, lipstick too red, attitude too sassy, bra too push-up, walk too carefree. So I'm just exaggerating what many women, many of us we just intuitively have to think about when we go out walking in the street. And the next cartoon is even stronger. These things I've been doing for Medium, unfortunately they ended. Medium, I don't know if you know, it's an online website that it's a blog platform, and there's a section of Medium called The Nib, which had a series of cartoons by different cartoonists, and they invited me to be a regular contributor. And Medium decided after 2 years of The Nib that it was successful, but they decided they wanted to change the format. So The Nib is still there, but it's not. I don't do a regular cartoon for them. But I was trying to push myself and do more strong political cartoons. And the next one is about the Ray Rice incident, the football player who beat his fiancée in the elevator. I have to remember that case. It's okay, he didn't mean it, I love him. And then down here, she says, it'll never happen again. And the judge says, can I have your autograph? So this is what I was trying to do on Medium for a while. And I drew this with a tablet. I started experimenting with drawing on a tablet and not using ink. And it makes the colors a little bit brighter. But there's no original art after that. This cartoon is something I did several years ago because I've started to try to connect American women with women around the globe in my mind and in what I draw. Because I think there are many connections between all women around the globe, that we all have similar problems, it's just a matter of degree. And I'm making fun of the Caucasian woman who's trying her best to connect. The next one is a sequential. You start on the upper left-hand side. I've heard that American women think we're oppressed. That's nice that they think about us. I hear they have to wear 7-inch heels and thick makeup. I worry about them. So. I also did another cartoon. I didn't show it. It's not in the slideshow, but of just two women talking at a cafe like this. One is just a Western-looking woman with a Western clothing, and the other woman is wearing a burqa, and they're talking about nothing to do with anything. And I tweeted it out. The cartoon was about, I forget what it was about, but it wasn't about the burqa. It wasn't about clothing or anything. It's just two women talking. And I tweeted it out, and one woman wrote to me who's from that part of the world, and she thanked me for just including a woman wearing a headscarf or a burqa, just as an everyday woman, that it wasn't about the fact that she was wearing a headscarf, it just was an ordinary woman. And now I wanted to talk a little bit about women cartoonists around the globe. These women, that's me on the left, and the other women are actual women that I've met that work in different countries as cartoonists. I've been fortunate to meet them and do some exhibits with them. These are just some drawings. And I wanted to show you a few of these cartoonists that I've met and then I really love their work and appreciate the struggles that they have. This is Firuza Muzaffari from Iran, and I don't know if you can see it, but she's hanging, I guess she's selling her bras and underclothes on the bus or on the subway, and this woman's blocking the boy's eyes. I mean, her cartoons are often slices of life like this, but they're also can be very strong political feminist statements. And she works there are a lot of cartoonists in Iran, believe it or not. It seems to be a culture that different countries have a culture for cartoons, and Iran is one of them. A lot of great artists, great cartoonists, and they work a lot with social media. They're all on Facebook, and they use Facebook to get their cartoons out. They somehow get around the censors that way. This is Anna von Rubur. Yeah, she's from Argentina. As you can see, a lot of them use captionless cartoons because it's easier to publish their work abroad. And this is Rema Soprani. She's from Venezuela, which is also a very oppressive country, and she's had some trouble with the government. This is very, very strong. This is Doa Aladi from Egypt. I've been working with an organization called Cartooning for Peace, which was started by Jean Plantu, a French cartoonist, and we have a prize that we give out every 2 years, and she got the Cartooning for Peace prize last year. And this is Piale Madra. If I can get my face stretched and make my eyes slanty and get silicone gel in my lips, I'll look great. She does this cartoon strip every week, I think, in Turkey. And she does some in English. So those are some of the women that I've met and that I've worked with. And I just feel like there's so many voices out there that can speak to problems in the world, and we have to listen to all these cartoonists and try to help get their voices out. There's a cartoon I did I forget what it was for, but I just wanted to show how there's different ways of looking at peace and different ways of getting at peace and expressing peace. These recent deaths in France of the cartoonist at Charlie Hebdo has really stirred up a lot of conversation in the community globally. You know, when the cartoonists were killed, you know, we're all us cartoonists are connected all over the world through social media. We talk all the time on social media and through Twitter and email and sharing cartoons. And when those cartoonists were killed, there was a flood of cartoons from all of these people sharing with each other our feelings about the deaths. And this is the one I did. I did a couple, actually. This is one of the ones I did. And part of this was in response to the cartoons that I was seeing. My colleagues, who I really love, many of the cartoons they were doing were showing that their pens or their pencils as swords or guns. You know, they felt such anger. They wanted to use their cartoons as an aggressive tool. And it just dawned on me that I don't want to do that. That's not my kind of cartoon. That's not what I want to do. They may have to do that, and I don't judge them for it. But I see my cartoons as an olive branch, a way of communicating across borders, talking to people, understanding different cultures through our cartoons and sharing ideas through cartoons. I know it may be idealistic, but that's the way I feel, and I feel like that's how I have to operate. I'd just like to end with this cartoon. Fun can happen to adults too. This is in the New Yorker because cartoons are fun, and they can be very serious too. As we know, they get people killed, but they're a great way to share, because everybody laughs. They're a great way to share our lives together, because we're all humans and we all love to laugh. So. And cartoons draw people in. That's what I love about them. People want to look at cartoons, so you get their attention because you're drawing a cartoon, and then you can talk about serious subjects. And that's all I have to say for tonight. Thank you very much.